When you are creating software in an imperative programming language, then every time you start a new project, you have to make a shitload of choices. Now, let's say, for instance, I want to create an API that reads data from my database and returns this as JSON. Now, if I was to create something like that in C#, then before I can even write a single line of code, I need to decide if I want to use raw ADO and SQL pasted into my C# endpoint, or do I want to use entity framework, or do I want to use an Hibernate, do I want to use Dapper, do I want to roll my own ORM? When I made all of those decisions, I need to choose an architecture for my solution. Do I want to use data repository pattern, or do I want to use IOC and dependency injection, etc., etc., etc. These are called architectural decisions and influence the quality of the end result you are producing. And it's all a useless exercise. You see, imperative programming languages for 80% of everything we do as software developers are simply inferior in nature. The reasons for that is because they demand from us that we make all these decisions. And science have actually conducted research on this and found it to be impossible for us cognitively to be able to choose the best solution. There simply doesn't exist one best solution when you have 200 alternatives. And what happens inside of the mind, the human mind, as you are confronted with 200 alternatives where you don't know the optimal solution to pick, is that either you're going to end up choosing an inferior solution where there are superior solutions you should have chosen instead, or you're going to become paralyzed, incapable of choosing, right? In a declarative programming language, there are no such choices. So architecture arguably becomes completely obsolete. I mean, the only architectural decisions you have in a declarative language is like, what's the name of my file going to be, right? And, do I need to, separate my endpoints into entity folders such that, all related CRUD operations towards a single one of my tables are in the same folder or not? So you don't have architectural decisions to the extent you do in an imperative language, may I emphasize. And of course, software architects are paid 2 to 3 times as much as software developers, something we all know, right? Even though they arguably are creating 10% of the code the software developers are creating. That means that you can literally get rid of all your architects, software development architects, if you use an imperative programming language, simply because of that architecture becomes completely obsolete and is no longer required. Because the framework itself has already made all those architectural decisions for you if you use a declarative, high-level programming language such as Hyperlambda. Now, to illustrate this, please look at this screenshot and realize that this is a CRUD read endpoint, HTTP, returning JSON in 2 different languages. One language is an imperative programming language, C#, and it was created using best practices according to ChatGPT for how to create an HTTP endpoint returning items from the database. and the other one was created using Hyperlambda. Now, why would you need an architect to tell you how to create your Hyperlambda code when there are no choices left for the architect to actually figure out?